moving on to the Ukraine. White people are mystified that refugees come in the shade of white. This is like the time when they discovered Beyonce was black. It seems to be like a similar moment.
Ukraine is interesting, man. It's given us a chance to see a lot of who people are. Like, people are showing their ass over this.
All you got to do is apply a little bit of pressure to people. It doesn't take much to see what comes out of their mouth and how they act when they pop. Doesn't take much. And it's amazing. I'm overwhelmed by the compassion that has poured out for the Ukraine. What is sad to me is how we can differentiate between refugees. So there's all this outpour for them and the poor little, Ukrainian boy who made it over to Estonia, but we don't have that same compassion for Central Americans coming to America. And I'd really like to know why. And if we're exhausted of the race issue, as I'm sure we all are, especially Black people, if we take that off the table, what is the answer of the difference in the reaction? What could it be if it's not race?
If you just want to come up with a different word for it, ethnocentrism, xenophobia, but those all boil down to race, if not just overall cultural, either a cultural superiority complex or just literally, just xenophobia and just not wanting people of another culture. Those people look like us, so we're okay with them being refugees. But those other people who don't have the same faith and don't look like us,
they don't seem to get that type of love. So it's whack. And so that makes me less invested in what's going on in that region if that region is not going to treat their foreign refugees who are trying to escape an invasion equally to their Ukrainians and have invested time, resources, and energy in their country and then are not getting the equal kind of compassion when they're trying to get to other countries and escaping the same situation as Ukrainians. I'm finding that problematic. And it's made me kind of take a step back from being vested in this. Also, just because this is happening to the Ukraine does not now make the Ukrainian government saints, right? Like, they have a right to an autonomy. They've been making strange decisions on their own for years. Yeah, they seem to be more westernized. And yes, I'm sure that this is related to somehow just selfishness on the part of Putin and wanting to extend his landmass. But quite frankly, like, from Putin's standpoint, he's like, well, I'm not an American. You're not my dad. And I'm not married to you. So why do I have to not do something you don't like? I've never said we're cool. I've never said I'm your partner. And I never said I'm bound by the same covenant as Western culture. And I think I've demonstrated on several levels, actually, that I'm not.
Yes.
So why are we surprised that Putin's doing kind of what he seems to have alluded to for decades, which is a kind of a United States of USSR, I think that's kind of always been his goal. The way in this government and the American government, the Republicans have always had their eye on the Supreme Court. I feel like Putin has always had his eye on a reunification of that region. And I think this is just one example of it. I mean, other examples of him was him, going into Georgia, was him going into Crimea. I mean, I don't know why we're clutching our pearls, right? Like, the man's KGB, he's an attorney. You might disagree with the way he's manifesting his intelligence, but he is intelligent.
Yeah, and he knows that everybody else is so deathly afraid of getting involved in an actual military fight. He's like, yeah, I don't give a fuck about your sanctions.
Right. Like, he's like, I'm a billionaire. I'm going to be all right.
Right. And then because he has an iron grasp on the politics in Russia, no matter how bad the economy gets, you're not going to get to the point where the Russians are actually capable of like rising up and demanding that he steps down. He'll literally slaughter them all in the streets if they do that. Like, good luck. There's, you know what I mean? You know how many of his political opponents that he's killed?
Yeah, imprisoned and poisoned. I mean, yeah. So I guess the whole clutching the pearls part of the whole situation is what has me thrown. At the same time, I don't know. Should the U.S. go in and send our American citizens into that region? I don't know. I would need to hear some compelling arguments as to why we need to compromise our military for something like that. But at the same time, America has always been in the position of where we want to dominate this planet. And if domination means impeding someone else and their autonomy as a nation, as a sovereign nation, then so be it. And being that the United States, I think, has broken every agreement they've ever made with anybody in the world, it should be no surprise that, Putin's going in the direction that he's going in and that we're not giving the Ukraine as much support as probably people expect us to do. First of all, they're not part of NATO. They were never going to be part of NATO. And I think there's several different issues being all shoved into the same box on the Ukraine issue. And it's not as clear cut as just Putin going in there and, oh my God, the Ukrainians are saints and we must save them all. The people are innocent, but I don't believe the government is, just because they're having a moment in the sun.
I do know that the Ukrainian government didn't ask for this.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ukrainian people didn't ask for this. I know the people didn't ask for this. I don't know what the leaders are saying to each other.
Yeah. And also, it is important to note that Ukraine has not actually applied for NATO citizenship. So like Putin's doing this because they were thinking about applying.
This is their Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Like we kind of had a similar reaction when, Russia tried to drop their Russian penis on Cuban soil. America was like, too close to our borders. He's expressing that same autonomy, right or wrong. Now, if you want to get into the debate of the right or wrong part, I think that's a different conversation from whether or not he has the autonomy to move in the direction he's moving in. I mean,
there could be a way where Ukraine could still get its sovereignty, and then Putin could say, hey, could you please not have any nukes pointed at us? And y'all work on that. But it's a bunch of dudes, so we gotta fight this out with guns and armies and bombs and shit, instead of you guys just talking about it. Right. Yeah. And then one thing about the refugee thing, I did want to point out that like a lot of folks on like the conservative side will say that the main difference is assimilation. That, people from certain cultures don't assimilate as well as like these people from European cultures. So I don't know, because I don't live in Europe, but that's what those folks say. And
how do they know that they merge with Ukrainian culture? I mean, how many Ukrainians have many Americans been around? Ukrainians are not the same as Russians. They have a very distinct culture. As a matter of fact, the Russian culture is born from the Ukraine, not vice versa. So, I mean, I don't know what level of exposure people have to be able to say, well, we can comfortably assimilate with these people more than these people. Because if your exposure to both of these groups of people are the same percentage-wise, then you're simply basing that on race.
Yeah, race or just like religious differences or something.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll let.
I don't know what that's based on, right? You have to tell me. Yeah.
I mean, they'll say, this one time that this one Muslim guy yelled at a lady for being in a mini skirt or whatever. Like that's what they'll say. But like,
all right, well, you know what? Fundamental Christians tend to do that too. There are plenty of Christian sects where women have to wear clothing that's under the knee or to the ankle, or can only wear certain types of cloth, or have to wear stockings. I mean, that's not something that's just specific to the Muslim religion. There's a lot of extreme Christian religions that do that too. As a matter of fact, if you spin that wheel and when that arrow lands on conservatism, you'll find that extreme Christianity and extreme Islam meet there. You're just calling the God something different.
Definitely.
Somehow it's always like this, the more stricter the religion, for some reason, God always tells them that women are second-class citizens, and they always seem to need a lot of them.
Oh yeah, they need a lot of them. They need to be able, and the priest needs to be able to fuck all of them.
Yeah, like somehow God always leaks that to them in the intel.
Yeah. By the way, your money and he needs your women.
Yeah, it's like remarkable. Here's the 10 commandments and make sure you get some vagina. Like, really? That's how that conversation went? And we're all buying that?
Told me.
And we're all buying that. Okay. And I'm the psycho. I'm really the one that's off here. Okay, got it. The cheese stands alone. I'm used to it.